Art colors the world and captures the human condition in a remarkable way. A breathtaking painting, a flawless melody, or a powerful piece of literature represent not only an admirable man-made work that required effort, but often express creativity and explore an array of human emotions. The way a song can comfort us during a heartbreak, or a movie can inspire a dramatic shift in our perspective. Without human expression through art, life would likely be a dull and mechanistic place, which is probably why Nietzsche said that without music, life would be a mistake. But what happens if the artist is a despicable, vile human being? What if their creations are perfection, but their behaviors are deplorable? For example, Martin Heidegger is regarded as one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, yet his ties to the Nazi Party calls into question not only his character, but alters how we view his work. Or what about Salvador Dalí, whose surrealist paintings are truly magnificent and provocative, but his sympathy towards Hitler taints his legacy? When you start to ask these questions and dig into the specifics, you realize that art can simply be for enjoyment, but it can also revolutionize the world. It can trigger wars, instigate factions, and spread pernicious ideas. So how should we view the relationship between art and an artist? How do we distinguish between good ideas and their ethically questionable creator? Should we still read works that have been stigmatized and bloodstained by inspiring murderous revolutions? Should we read or listen to ideas that we don't agree with? Those are the questions I hope to explore with you today and see if we can find some answers. First, let's discuss the dynamic between art and the artist. How are they distinct and where do they overlap? I think it's obvious to say that an artist has a heavy influence upon their work. Their experiences, their beliefs, their humors, their ideas are directly poured into their creation. For example, David Foster Wallace suffered heavily from depression and suicide, and you see this directly reflected upon his characters and in his writing. However, once art is made, it has a life of its own, so to speak. It's a separate entity. It's no longer under the manipulation and control of the creator. It's communally owned to be appreciated, enjoyed, and shared. And the detestable views of its creator don't actually dampen or dull the quality and value of the art. They just alter how we perceive the artist. For example, in pop culture, Kanye West has produced some of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time, and regardless of how derogatory his views of Jewish people are, they don't change the impact of his music. They only change his reputation. In the sphere of philosophy, the same goes for Martin Heidegger. The useful and provocative concepts held within being and time do not get erased by his associations to the Nazi regime. However, the complication arises with how we view and treat an artist moving forward. How do I reject the grotesque behavior of the artist while not robbing myself of the enjoyment or the enrichment of their creation? And I believe the answer resides in choice. I can choose to not let the behaviors or actions of an artist taint the value that I derive from their work. I can accept and appreciate the art and reject the artist. The one caveat I'll mention is that sometimes an artist can bleed directly into their work, making the art and the artist quite inseparable. And in a situation like this, you can either take it or leave it. Again, I think it comes down to choice, but you should not ban it, which we'll touch on later in this video. Next, we need to discuss the misinterpretations and misunderstandings of art. For this, I'd like to reference Marxism, although I'm sure there are various other examples as well. Marxism and Marxist ideology has become the boogeyman within politics. And I'll say up front, I am far from a socialist and see various flaws within Marxist ideology. But I think it's important to point out that Marxism has been lazily used as this kind of catch-all term and buzzword to just stir people up. Karl Marx, if you're unfamiliar, wrote the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital throughout the late 1800s. His theory centers around a strong criticism of capitalism, which he believed was inherently flawed, and he argued for a revamp of social and economic systems. His works inspired anarchists and socialists in various nations to rise up, specifically sparking multiple revolutions in Russia. However, it's critical to acknowledge that Marxism is not Trotskyism, nor Leninism, nor Stalinism. If we want to criticize art or ideas, we should judge them on the merits of the ideas themselves, not a distorted version of them. And another example of how art has been misused could be Friedrich Nietzsche. And Nietzsche was a staunch critic of Christianity and religion, but he was no anti-Semite. Unfortunately, due to his sister's ties to German nationalism and Hitler's exploitation, his work became affiliated with the Nazi Party until he was later vindicated. And this just illustrates how art or belief system can be manipulated within the public eye. And much of this has happened in modern political discourse where anything loosely critical of capitalism is tied to Marxism. Any talk of social equity or equality has been deemed Marxist ideology, when in reality, how many of these young activists do you think have actually read a single page of Marx? Probably not that many. And regardless of your stance on any particular issue, it's critical to assess and judge the ideas themselves. Don't take a talking words head for it or ban dangerous ideas. The best way to combat bad ideas is to understand why they're bad and then to promote better ones. And this brings me to my last point, which is that we should not ostracize books or ideas that we disagree with. I have no sympathies or compassion for communism, but by reading the Communist Manifesto, I can craft a better argument against the actual theories within the text and have a better understanding of the opposing worldview. Blaise Pascal wrote a great piece about this in Ponces when he was describing how to have a productive conversation with someone you disagree with. When we want to correct someone usefully and show him he is wrong, we must see from his point of view he is approaching the matter, for it is usually right from that point of view, and we must admit this, but show him the point of view from which it is wrong. This just goes to show that perspective and information changes what is right or wrong to a particular person. So knowledge is power in this case. The more you can read and listen to all ideas, you can have a better understanding and craft a better explanation or argument to an opposing view. Obviously, you don't need to listen to every opposing view, but by having greater clarity on what you stand for and why you stand for it, it only enhances your rationality. Lastly, don't avoid art purely because of the reputation or actions of the artist. If you can derive value or enjoyment from a piece of art, don't let the artist inhibit you from doing so. Choose to separate them and appreciate the art for what it is in and of itself. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I gave your brain something to chew on. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Can you separate the art from the artist? Are there particular situations where you can? Are generalizations too broad? Let me know. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.